Good day, everyone. It's 12 o'clock, and that means it's Yaba o'clock. Actually, it's Yaba Voice o'clock. And the 12 o'clock at this particular hour, that's where we come up live on something very educative and something wonderful to enlighten, teach, and to help our community become better and to also function very well. And on this note, I want to welcome everyone who's here on this call at this moment. I want to thank you for joining us early at 12 noon. Thank you for being part of this monthly webinar. Good day, good morning, good evening, good night, or wherever it is that you are joining us from. We are so delighted. I look forward to this every month because it's time to see everyone once again. Even though I may not know you, but at least I'm excited to see that you're here and you're joining and you're also very alive and well. So thank you so very much once again for being on this call with us. This is the 11th webinar in the year 2022. We've come a long way, a beautiful long way. And some people have actually joined every of the series with us. But we're so very grateful and happy that you're here again today. So on this note, the medical director, Dr. Ligo Medical Warrior, to welcome us formally to this webinar this afternoon. Over to you, the medical director, sir.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Akintoye, for the good work. Good afternoon, everyone all over the nation, and good day to everyone outside the country. I welcome you warmly to this month's edition of webinar by Yaba Voice. As you all know, Yaba Voice is a platform for mental health education, advocacy, and community outreach. It is a social media platform of Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, Lagos, through which the hospital creates awareness and educate the populace on topical mental health issues. Today's topic is disordered person. Personality disorders, causes, and treatment. As we all know, personality is a way of thinking, feelings, and behavior, both inherent and acquired, that distinguish one person from another. It is a product of nature and nurture, and this manifests as the various types of personality traits in an individual. The study of personality can be said to have its origin in the fundamental idea that people are distinguished by their characteristics, individual pattern of behavior in life. And this one includes their major traits, the interests, the drives, the values, the self-concept, and ability, as well as emotional patterns. In today's webinar, there are many questions to be answered. For instance, what do we understand by personality? And where does it become a disorder? How do we recognize personality disorders and the various types of it? What are the likely factors responsible for personality disorders? How do we manage someone with personality disorder? To address these issues are great mental experts on this platform today. The first of them is Dr. Jide Raji. Dr. Jide Raji is a consultant psychiatrist with special interests in general, forensic, and occupational mental health, with over 12 years of experience at Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba. He is also a researcher. After his basic medical degree, Dr. Raji proceeded to obtain fellowship of the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria. He is also a certified rational emotive behavioral therapist trained from Albert Ellis Institute, New York. Dr. Raji holds a postgraduate diploma in health, safety, and environmental management. He is also a teacher and a clinical instructor at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, and the National Postgraduate Medical College. He is married with children. The second speaker for today's program is Mr. Pilot Molahan Oluwafunsho. Pilot is a therapist, is a researcher, and a seasoned clinical psychologist. His area of expertise include, but not limited to, psychological intervention for people with emotional and behavioral challenges, as well as in substance use disorders. Mr. Pilot holds Bachelor of Science in Pure and Applied Psychology and a Master's in Science in Clinical Psychology from the prestigious University of Lagos. He is a licensed clinical psychologist and a registered member of Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists. Mr. Pilot has served in various capacities at both local and national level, providing psychological solutions to various issues. His experiences of national assignments include psychosocial response during COVID-19 pandemic and psychologically traumatized patients from natural or man-made disaster. Mr. Pilot is also married with children. I want to encourage all of us to finally relax this day and listen to our mental health experts as we promise you a rewarding session of today's seminar. Over to you, Mrs. Kemi Akintoyese.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that arousing welcome. And the medical director had not just welcomed us, but had also kickstarted the conversation for today. He had told us what exactly personality is and some of the things that we should begin to look forward to in today's webinar. I want to just quickly encourage that we are streaming live on Facebook. So if someone that you know is finding it difficult or they may not be able to connect on the Zoom platform, if they can join us live on the Facebook page of Yaba Voice. Yaba Voice, one word, we are streaming live now. And so you can also just join us and also benefit from today's webinar. And if you know someone that also needs to be here, someone that needs to hear this, someone that you have always wondered, what is wrong with this person? Why is this person behaving this way? Please invite them to come and join so that it's important. This is a very germane discussion that we are having this day. And like you hear the medical director say, we have seasoned experts who will kickstart this conversation. So let's the time keep rolling now. We have just 1 hour, so we have to run as quick as possible. All right, so Dr. Raji, well, we're talking about personality. What is personality? What is personality disorder? And then again, Edo, is it a mental health problem? Is personality disorder a mental health problem? Can we say it's a mental health problem? All right, so over to you, Dr. Raji.
Thank you very much, Ms. Akintoyese, the medical director, the Yaba community, viewers on different platforms. I welcome everybody, and I'm happy to be here to discuss this very diverse, controversial, and one of the most nuanced topic in medicine, and by extension, mental health at large. Really, the understanding of this critical concept, personality, and its attendant disorders are what actually distinguish specialties and other branches of medicine generally. Again, personality is loosely used within clinical setting and outside, but yet rarely it is not really well defined in most medical texts that you see around. So while in the course of our presentation here, I will make attempt at defining it. But of course, of all the mainstream definitions that we have, there are two common features of any definition you probably will see. And the two key concepts are the time and the setting. And of course, just like he really requested me to do, what is personality? Personality can be defined as a distinctive and relatively consistent way of thinking, feeling, behaving that characterizes the person's responses to life situation across time and setting. Just like I said earlier, these two key concepts are key. And of course, this is based on the assumption that certain behaviors characterize a person in a wide variety of behavior. So if you look at my definition, the operational words there that you can pick are the consistency, the regularity, of course, of thought, feelings, and behavior across what? Time and setting. And as we all know, like we tell people that individuals' personality largely is an aggregation of different personality traits. And of course, in the course of our discussion, you have a lot of proponents and all that, but I'll talk about just two major ones. Personality traits. Alport talks about the cardinal traits. It talks about the central and the secondary traits. The cardinal traits are the traits that dominate an individual's past, the point that the individual can become known for them. So if you put another way, we can say personality is actually the deterministic of human behavior, life. That a few examples that come to mind is, I'm sure we all know Mother Teresa. When people remember Mother Teresa, they will say Mother Teresa's altruism. But okay, let's come home here. Look at Pastor Adeboye. When people talk about Pastor Adeboye, they talk about Pastor Adeboye's humility. And of course, this former JAMB registrar, Professor Ishak Oloyede, people talk about Professor Oloyede's straightforwardness. But of course, I want to quickly sound a word of note here that the cardinal personality traits are not very common. So you don't see it in all human as against the central traits that are common in most people. They are the ones that largely influence our behavior. An example of these traits include honesty, generosity, sensitivity, against dishonesty, mean. You can say the person is insensitive rather. So these are the traits that really form the building blocks of individual personality. And the last, but not the least, is secondary traits. And these are the characteristics that surface in situations. So we can refer to them as being situational. They only pop up in our behaviors, only in specific situations and circumstances. An example of that is you can see someone who is shy when he wants in the public, or when you are supposed to give a public lecture, you have an else, the person in normal settings. And another school of thought actually talk about the big 5 personality traits, in which case they talk about the openness, they talk about conscientiousness, extroversions, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And it is believed that those who score very high on conscientiousness personality traits, they are the ones you see in life generally. They are very methodical. A lot of them are very goal-oriented, and they become some perfectionists of some sort. And those who score very low on these personality traits are the ones that are a bit laid back. If you remember when we were in the university, those are the ones we refer to as the NFAs, no future ambitions, you know. And people who score high on openness are said to be the very broad-minded people. They are open-minded. They have this modern outlook to issues of life. And whereas those who score low on these personality traits, openness, they are the ones that have this conservative, look to life. They are very reluctant to change. And they have this archaic and traditional approach to life generally. And on agreeableness, those who score high, they are the ones who are just there, everly ready to help. They are kind-hearted, and those who score low on these personality traits, if you look around, those are the ones you see them. They are very unfriendly. They are unyielding, such that when you need to do a task together, once they hold on tenaciously to a view, to let them off it will be very difficult. And on neuroticism, those who score very high on neuroticism, they are the very pessimistic people. They look at life from all the negative, they just are full of doom. They don't see the positive side of things generally. And while those who score, those who have extroversion are the happy-go-lucky type. They like meeting people. They are the party type. They get there. They are happy. They make it happen. In the Yoruba parlance, they call them a friend, Dr. Tayo Ajiro Tutu. And those who score low in introversion are the ones who stay at home. They rather will not want to go out. They speak less, and they do not have as many friends, as expected.
Dr. Raji, I have
So
to
in
cut
all
you
of
here.
these personal, no,
Dr.
it is
Raji.
when this personality traits become inflexible, when they become maladaptive, such that they cause significant functional impairment in these people and subjective distress to them. That is when we actually talk about personality disorder. And before you cut me short, let me just quickly answer to the last leg of your question, which is, what is personality disorder? According to the DSM-5, it defines personality disorder as an enduring pattern of behavior and inner experiences that deviate significantly from individuals' cultural standard. It is said to be highly pervasive. It has its onset in early adolescence. It is stable throughout time, and it can lead to unhappiness, impairment, and manifest in at least 2 of 4 cardinal areas of our life. And this includes cognition, effectiveness, interpersonal relationship, and impulse control. I mean, when you look at this, of course, whoever has this disorder, you can jolly well say that the person has a mental disorder. Thank you.
It's really obvious that our speakers today are loaded, but we really don't have time. And that's why I had to cut to Dr. Raji. I'm so very sorry about that. But we had to just run off because of the time schedule. And then we want people to be able to ask questions and make comments on this very important discussion that we are having today. So, Mr. Peanut Bolako, what are the causes of personality disorder? Dr. Raji has told us that yes, it's a form of mental health disorder. But what are the causes? How do people get on with this thing called personality disorders?
Right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Akintoye, and permit me to stand on other existing protocols that have been laid already by Dr. Raji. So in discussing the causes of personality disorder, I would like to start by saying that the MD has already spoken a part of what personality is, as well as Dr. Raji himself in his introduction. But I would like to just add to say that personality is a combination of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior that makes us unique, because that is what makes an individual's personality. And it's the way we view, understand, and relate to the outside world, as well as how we see ourselves as individuals. And this personality is usually formed at childhood, and it's shaped basically by our interaction, as well as other combination of factors. But the vast majority of research into personality disorder has shown that the causes are a combination of genetics as well as environmental factors. But before I go on into discussing these genetic or environmental factors, I would like to state here that one's genetic predisposition may make one vulnerable to the development of a personality disorder, and a life situation may trigger the actual development of it. But it's also important to say here that the individual experiencing a personality disorder, the experiences are usually unique to them, and these causes as well could be unique. But when I'm talking about the genetic factors, what are some of these? Does this mean? It means that certain personality traits that may have been passed on to an individual by the parent through the inherited genes. Dr. Raji gave some examples around the big 5 personality, and some of these traits are sometimes called a temperament as well. So for examples, you realize that baby varies in how they act and how active they are sometimes, and their attention span, as well as how they adapt to changes. So in discussing the environmental factors, this involves the surroundings an individual grows up in, events that occurs, as well as their relationship with family members, their neighbors, as well as their peers. But under these environmental factors, I will project more on early life experiences. But before I do that, the environment and social circumstances an individual grows up in and the quality of care received can affect the way an individual personality will develop. So it's very important that we talk about these environmental factors in this discussion, because it's very important, because the individual may experience, or an individual may experience, a form of personality disorder if an individual grows up in an unstable or a chaotic family life, such as maybe the survival instincts within the family talks about things such as aggression, or if such an individual lives with a parent or a guardian who is an alcoholic, for instance, or obviously maybe having to do with a mental health diagnosis. Things such as lack of support as well could also play a very important factor in this, or maybe having some form of bad experiences during, for instance, school life, life generally, or as well as within the community, to things such as peer group influences, as well as bullying. We can also talk about poverty, as well as discrimination and migration. But more importantly, is the cultural factors under these environmental factors, because cultural factors also play a role in the development of personality disorder, as demonstrated by a lot of research work and the rates of personality disorder in different countries. You know, during the course of preparation for this webinar, I got into research, and I read about a research work that was done, and it compared personality disorders in different countries and different continents. And it found out that there's a remarkable low cases of something such as antisocial personality disorder in places such as Taiwan, China, as well as Japan. But on the other spectrum, there's a high, significantly high rate in the cluster C that we'll still discuss in the course of this presentation. When we talk about early life experiences, you know, our experiences growing up can affect our personality as well. You know, if one had a difficult childhood, or you might develop certain beliefs about the way people think and way people behave and how relationship does work. And this can lead to developing certain strategies for coping, which may have been necessary when you were a child, but obviously maybe not necessarily useful. And some of the things that could also be causal factors in early life experiences of any individual could be neglect, bereavement, you know, sudden bereavement, and all forms of emotional, physical, sexual, as well as verbal abuse could also play an important role, or even going through a traumatic accident as well, or experiencing violence, such as what's going on in Ukraine right now. You know, these are things that can obviously impact on people. Imagine children who, at the initial time of the war, asked to live with their parents, live with their mothers, and their father had to stay. You know, some of these events can have a way of playing out in our personality. But it's also very important that I say this, that not everyone who experiences a traumatic situation would develop a personality disorders. And similarly, not everyone who develops a personality disorder will have gone through a traumatic experience. You know, in a research work that was done between trying to compare childhood traumas and development of personality disorder, it was found that people with borderline personality, which my co-speaker will still talk about, for example, had especially high rates of childhood sexual traumas. And this is something that is clinically also backed, because in sessions or during consultations, these are things that have also been seen, and I can attest to that personally. You know, and people with, and I'll also talk about verbal abuse. So for instance, in a study was also experienced that verbal abuse of children are 3 times more likely to have other forms of personality disorder. So in rounding up, other risk factors that may contribute aside includes things such as family history of personality disorder or mental illness, as well as possibility of being diagnosed or this being diagnosed with childhood conduct disorder. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Bola of Pilos, for that. You know, when you were rounding up now, you just mentioned verbal abuse. And I recall that while growing up, you know, there are names that we were called, you know, you call like Tile, Egira, and all of those. I particularly remember my mom said, I named for abusing Egira. He will tag you, you know, I don't know if my personality is still okay. I don't know, but then maybe we will still look at some of those things and see are there other inherent factors that makes it that some people get onto this. I know you mentioned that, but particularly maybe there are still some tips that you'll be able to give us that will know that yes, the name calling is not good particularly, but then are there other factors that are in this individual that could also make them more prone, more susceptible to breaking down? And while we are rushing forward, the time is really, really going this afternoon. I don't know where it's going to. But Dr. Raj, can you tell us what are the types of personality that people have? Then can an individual have more than one personality disorder? Dr. Raj, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Absolutely, yes. People can have more than one personality disorder at a time. And according to DSM-5, it is possible that when you make a diagnosis of a personality disorder in a person, you might likely have a comorbid, another personality disorder. And another possibility is the fact that people can have multiple traits that could actually divide them into different personality type, but they don't have enough of these criteria to make a diagnosis of a personality disorder in them. So I'll jump quickly to the different types of personality disorders. We have 10 of them, and they have been grouped into clusters. So we have the cluster A. The cluster A are the one they refer to as the odd-eccentric personality disorders, and these include the paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorder. Cluster B, the dramatic, emotional, and erratic personality disorder comprising of antisocial, borderline personality disorder, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorder. And we have the cluster C. These are the anxious and the fearful personality disorder, and this includes avoidant, dependent, and obsessive personality disorder. So I'll take them one by each. Because of our time, I'll just touch on the very salient defining features of them. So for paranoid personality disorder, the key defining feature for this type of disorder is when you see individual who distrusts others so much, and they have long standing history of suspiciousness. Every motive of people, they read meanings to it. They avoid responsibility, and they don't take action for their own, or they blame others for their own actions. They are quite hostile. They can be very angry. They are very irritable a host of time, and they interpret, just any possible comment. If you make a comment about me, they read so much meaning to it. Why would you say about Bawoni? I'm older than you, blah, 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 and all that. So, and this type of personality type, a lot of them can be very jealous and very argumentative. They are usually unemotional and fail to maintain, friendly relationship. And in some cases, they show stubbornness. They have this undue self-importance. And they are very fearful to confide in people, believing that when they give information to you, such information can be used against them. And there's always recurrent suspicions, especially about their intimate partners. And the sufferers of these personality disorders, a lot of time, they have difficulty having close relationships, and they are very guarded, they are very secretive, hostile, and they could be very sarcastic. And a lot of them, they are very litigious. Any small thing, they take people to court. And so when you have a neighbor that just after a small argument, it takes you to court, you might want to believe that such person has a paranoid personality disorder. For schizoid personality disorder, the key defining features for them is social withdrawal. They are very detached socially, and they have limited emotional expression in interpersonal relationship. They are cold. Of course, they can be very self-sufficient and have limited ability to express. Whether you abuse them or you give them accolades, the expression on their face is just very blunt. They prefer solitary activities, for example, reading, and of course, they are preoccupied with very, very funny fantasies. A lot of them lead lonely life, and their sexual life only exists in fantasy, such that a lot of them actually do not get married, and they prefer lonely, the non-competitive jobs. And that is why you see some of them, they prefer to work in the night shift, or if they work in a company, they rather will want to work on a line where people are not there, just because they just want to avoid interacting with other people. And for the third one in that category, the schizotypal personality disorder, the key defining features for them are the fact that they are socially anxious, they are very quite eccentric in their behavior. Their life is full of suspiciousness. Of course, they have poor interpersonal relationship. And of course, you see the oddity in them is so humongous that you don't even have to be a doctor or a clinician before you notice this. So you see people in their neighbors, they will just say, come, what I go in conscious boy and all that. Those are the people that have this kind of personality disorder. Of course, when some of them are subjected to stress, they can come down with the brief psychotic symptoms. And, approximately about 3% of the general population have this type of personality disorder. For the antisocial, this is one that excites me so much, because those sufferers, those who have them, sometimes they actually come to you as very affable, nice looking, good looking, very social. But when you dig deep, you realize that a lot of them have a long history of disregard for rules. They violate the right of others. And these are people, you see them, they commit crime, they rob. And when they rob with, rape rather, they rape with reckless abandonment. They don't show remorse, Some of their life is full of life. They steal, they abuse substances. And this disorder, quite a number of times, they actually start in early childhood, and you see most of them in the female folks. And as adults, rather, they are not trusted. People around don't trust them, and they can be very impulsive in their actions. They are prone to violence. Of course, when you see them in earlier than 18, of course, we make a diagnosis of conduct disorders in them, and our prisons are washed with this type of personality disorder. The next one is narcissistic personality disorder, and the sufferer of this, when you see them, what you see in them is they lack empathy. Of course, they seek admiration so much. They have this heightened sense of importance, and they have this high level of entitlement. They believe they are unique in some ways, and they behave like that too. You can see them very haughty, very arrogant. They seek a lot of favors, but mark you, those favors you can never request from them because they won't oblige you. An affected person might have low self-esteem. I know a lot of them are prone to having depression, and of course, this happens in about 1% of the general population. And one funny thing about this personality disorder is the fact that, just like I talked about earlier, to further buttress my answering your question, it can overlap between histrionic personality type and antisocial personality type. And of course, you see males coming down more with this personality disorder. And for histrionic personality disorder, the key defining features for them are largely, things that surround emotions. They are quite attention-seeking. They are overly concerned with their physical attribute, attractiveness. They are very theatrical. They dramatize a lot. And of course, their relationship is just on the surface, and that's why they cannot keep them. They are very utterly dependent on people. They demand endless need for assurance, and they can be very flirtatious. Especially these people, when you meet them during the consultation, they have the mastery of words. They can be colorful, such that when you ask them a question, they give it to you, and before you know it, they probably might take over the interview from you. And of course, understandably, you will see more of this in the female folks. The sufferer of this personality disorder actually can have problems in maintaining interpersonal relationships. The next is the borderline personality type, and the key defining feature in this is the impulsivity. They are very explosive in their emotions. and you find this in more than one area. So you can see them, they can be very reckless in driving. They shop without, and after shopping, they now ask themselves, do I really need this? And of course, this together with instability of their affects distinguishes them. And they have problem with self-image, interpersonal relationship. They have chronic feeling of emptiness. They are unstable in their affect, just like I've said. And they have marked emotional affective reactivity. This moment, they are smiling, happy. The next moment, they are sad. The other one, they are very flabbergasted, and inappropriate anger. You do something small, you just see them coming with very outlandish, not very corresponding emotional response to whatever. And they have recurrent suicide. It's common in them. And the sufferers of this, largely, they have chaotic life pattern, broken relationship, disrupted education. They have problems with workplace. And of course, this is more common in female folks. And of course, before I go ahead, you see a lot of them in our outpatient department. As much as 10% of outpatient patients who present at outpatients have this, and about 20% of them in the inpatient setting. The last cluster now, which is the anxious and fearful, the avoidant personality type. The key defining features for them is that they are persistently insecure, they lack self-esteem, they feel socially inferior, they just feel they are unappealing, they have feeling of socially inept, and they are preoccupied with possibility of social rejection, disapproval, and they worry, and they are timid, and they avoid risk. So you don't see them taking, largely that's what defines them, and they have very few friends. And understandably, a lot of them have problems with their work because they lack these interpersonal relationship. And of course, this occur in equal proportion in both genders. And of course, the dependent personality type now, and the key defining feature for this includes, the lack of initiative. They are indecisive, largely. They avoid responsibility. They are always very pessimistic about life. They are passive, not very aggressive in their feelings. Even when people charge at them, they just come to you as very meek. They cling to others for the fear of abandonment, and they are the people, you see them, they persevere in very abusive relationship for a long period of time. And this is more common, of course, understandably, in females, and they constitute about 2% of all personality type. And this is common amongst those who actually have a lot of chronic illnesses as child, and depression is very common in this particular personality disorder type. But of course, for them, I need to sound this warning. Marriage can be a protective factor for them, particularly if their spouse is the very energetic, assertive, and determined person who really can help them in making decisions and arranging their life. Then the last and not the least, which is the obsessive compulsive personality type, the key defining features in this one is they are utterly occupied with details, rules, orders, and schedules at the expense of efficiency, openness, flexibility. So they so much preoccupy themselves such that they will not be able to complete tasks. And they are too formal, they are too serious, they take life too serious, they lack sense of humor, and they are very, very uncompromising in their dealings with people. Of course, you want to pray you don't get into task with them. You might have torrid times because they are very unyielding. The fear of mistake rendered them indecisive, like I've said, and the prevalence is unknown. but of course, this affects more male folks. And the sufferer of this, they demand a lot of submissiveness from people around them.
Dr. Raji,
Thank you very much.
thank you so very much. I know this is huge. I know as Dr. Raji was speaking, what was going on in my mind is I'm just looking at the list. Which one do I fall into? In which category? And I hope you guys are doing the same thing back there. Maybe not just you, maybe family members, friends that you have always had issues with because you don't even understand why they are doing or behaving the way they are behaving. Or maybe your own children. No, they behave in certain manners and you start asking them why, what is happening exactly? And it gets you into conflict situations with them. It affects a personal relationship. And that's why Mr. Pilot is going to tell us that, yes, what are the clear signs? So that at least we're going to be living here to understand that, okay, yes, we now have the list, the whole list of what the different types of personality disorders. But if you're talking about these personality disorders, what are the core signs that will make you to know that, oh, I need to watch out and see adventure. There is something here that I need to be pumped about in finding intervention. Over to you, Mr. Pilot Bolaho.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Akintoye. So Dr. Raja has done a very brilliant job, but I would just like to say this, like each of the 10 personality types or personality disorder has its own specific signs and symptoms, and some of these features are some of the things Dr. Raji I just spoke about. But it's very important, you know, you mentioned just now, Mrs. Akintoye, that while he was speaking, you were trying to fit in and see where you fall in within of those personality disorders. So it's very important to understand that there's a difference between personality traits and personality disorder. So for instance, a person who is shy or likes to spend time alone cannot be necessarily said to have an avoidant or a schizoid personality. So to be able to determine a personality disorder, you start by assessing. It's very important in clinical setting before you make your judgment. And this could be done, like Dr. Raji mentioned, in your intake interview, which is the clinical interview, or through some form of assessment, proper assessment, maybe using the Minnesota Multifaceted Personality Inventory. And one of the things you're trying to look at basically is how this person's personality affects parts of their life, you know, and the areas that we are going to be looking at primarily would include things such as their behavior, their functionality in terms of work, in terms of relationship, as well is also very, very important. It's also very, very important at this point. And it's also very important that you talk about their feelings, their emotion, as well as their self-identity and awareness of reality as well. So in terms of the two areas I'll be touching on quickly is the identity of and a sense of themselves as well as their relationship. You know, people with personality disorder generally lack a clear or stable image of themselves, and how they see themselves often changes between and majorly depending on the situation or people they are with, you know. And Dr. Raji gave some very good examples while he was talking. And, you know, their self-esteem may be very unrealistic, just like Dr. Raji has mentioned. It could be very high or extremely low. But in terms of relationship, which is one of the key areas where this would be very obvious, is that people with personality disorder struggle to form close or even stable relationship. For some of them who are able to form relationship, we realize that their relationship are usually unstable with others due to their problematic beliefs as well as their behavior. And this would primarily be seen within the cluster B, you know, and they lack empathy or respect for others. And this is one area where I would just like to give an example of somebody who has an antisocial personality, who recently, one of my senior colleagues was discussing with me, and she was like, you know, this woman is going to die of cancer very soon, and she had invested everything she had in all of her children. And there's this particular son that she has, and this boy does not even understand any, or does not even give any empathy towards this woman. He does not even understand what the woman is talking about in terms of trying to fix up his life. But one of the very distinguishing factors that can give us a sign of personality disorder is that most people who have one often have little or no insight or self-awareness and of how their thoughts or how their behaviors can be quite problematic. But generally, the general signs you can look for is that this person's behavior is usually going to be inconsistent. You know, it could be very frustrating and even very confusing for loved ones and other people that they interact with. And they may have issues, you know, understanding realistic as well as acceptable ways to treat others and even behaving around them as well. and they may be unaware of their behaviors, causing problems to themselves. Even these individuals that have these personality disorders are not even aware that the traits or their behaviors, as it were, that is the problematic behavior. So they don't even know, talk less of it affecting other people. And this is one part that really is quite amusing in clinical setting, because if a person who has a personality disorder is a parent, imagine that, we've talked about it in context of the individual, but imagine a person who has a personality disorder nurturing a child. So their parenting style is always very, very unstable. It could range from something such as being detached to being over emotional, or even abusive, or highly irresponsible. And this can sometimes lead to a lot of physical, emotional, or mental issues, even in their children. And, just talking about this now, I just remember a case of, sometimes you sit in front of your client and you wonder why they're having some form of emotional issues, and they'll tell you, it's my parent. I know of a client who recently, the thought of coming back to Lagos, she's currently in her service year, and the thought of just coming back to Lagos and completing the service year is making her go through a lot of emotional distress, because she says her father is extremely abusive. He wants you to go to work, you go to work, you come back late, he's asking why you didn't close early. If you are trying to stay back a little bit at home to get some rest, he's asking why you're not going out in the morning. So it's just, honestly, in this point, very confusing. And that's how sometimes the symptoms of personality disorder can indeed play out in relationship setting. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And this particular thing that Mr. Pino just mentioned also had given me quite a lot of thought. Now, when you have parents who have personality issues, personality disorders, how does it now play out on the lives of the children? Talking about how the parenting styles, emotional development, and so many other things. This is huge. Every time we'll still come back to this topic. Then we'll begin to look at it one by one and look at how it just affects very many parts of our life. And because of our time, quickly, Dr. Raji, in a few minutes, can you just tell us, can individuals outgrow this personality disorders? And is there any need for treatment? Yes, you have told us that, yes, it's a disorder, but is there a need for treatment? And some people actually outgrow it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much once again. Yeah, the answer is yes, but of course not an umbrella yes for all the personality disorders. Some can be very problematic, very enduring. But again, if you look at it by the very definition of personality disorder as a chronic pattern of behavior, it implies that the symptoms are stable over time. However, recent studies have shown that some symptoms improve over time. And in some personality disorders, particularly the borderline, some of them have, in quote, what they call complete remission. And it has been documented about 80% of those with borderline personality type, 80%, 85% of those with borderline personality disorder show marked improvement and reduction of symptoms over personality type, particularly the antisocial. But of course, some of them, the intensity and the recurrence, if I may put that way, gets better with time. But of course, it can be very enduring and can be very problematic in treating. And of course, treatment is very, very necessary, depending on the goal of treatment. Because you see, these personality disorders actually impact individual greatly, impacts their health, it impacts people around, impacts them occupationally and all of that. So you really want to intervene, make some interventions so that you can make life very meaningful for them and to them. Just like I said earlier, depending on the mode of the treatment, for it might just be to overcome the emotional problems, like depression, anxiety, and prevent suicide. Due respect to those that are involved, you can imagine what the news we get recently of people, because of just marital infidelity, people just go around and, either take a dive into the ocean or take snipers. Perhaps maybe people with this personality disorder, if they had been, really treated, might have had a better outcome. And of course, there are different psychotherapeutic intervention, the CBT, interpersonal relationship, can make a whole lot of difference in the treatment. And just like I said again, from some of these personality types, especially the cluster A and those in cluster C, the anxiety, we can make use of different medication, the anxiolytics, the antipsychotic, and for some of them, the mood stabilizers and the antidepressant, because they really come down with a whole lot of emotional problems. So treatment in them is very, very necessary to forestall complications, just like we have been seeing in recent time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Raji. So Dr. Raji has told us that one, treatment is important for some of them. Some of them, yes, get remitted over time, but yes, treatment is quite important. It's not the time to begin to call them names and other things like that. It's this individual has a mental health condition that they need help with. And so if we're going to get it right, the most important thing is to be able to get them the help that they need. We'll get to the chat box quickly and then we'll talk about it. But quickly before we do that, I want Mr. Pino to talk about the preventive strategies for a personality disorder. What are the preventive strategies for personality disorder?
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Akintoye. At this time, there are no known ways to prevent personality disorder, but many of the related problems associated with it can be lessened with treatment, just as Dr. Raji mentioned. Medication and some other forms of psychotherapy can also be very helpful. And the challenge is that many studies have not been directed at identifying the preventive measures as they've done for the causes as well as the treatment as well. But one of the things we can definitely do is what Yaba Voice is doing today. And I feel that the management of Yaba Voice deserve a lot of accolades for this. And because one of the main things we need to do is to raise awareness, educating the public about the causes of and symptoms of personality disorder, teaching parents, I'll talk about the parenting because parenting is a very key concept that we all have to embrace. And because of how important it is to protect their children from verbal, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, in practice, I've seen clients who will tell you that they were sexually abused by maybe a mom's younger brother or something, and when they raise this, the mom will just say, "Keep shut, don't talk about it." And we don't know that this does really have an impact. So it's very important that we raise awareness through this process, and we also have to use this medium to teach parents the skills of raising their children with nurturance, guidance, and care, and helping parents and children understand the damaging causes of some of this personality disorder. We also have to create a very supportive and environment for these people and let them understand that even though you may have this challenge, you are not alone and you can obviously be helped depending on the available resources. So the honest truth is that personality disorder does affect millions of lives around the world, and it causes a lot of pain. Dr. Raji just talked about relationship issues a short while ago. It also affects things such as instability, anxiety, depression. And the most painful part of this is that sometimes this personality disorders can be self-consuming, and it usually erodes the quality of life of this individual. But yes, no, we can't change genetics, nor can we eradicate personality disorders completely, but we can make a difference, such as what Yaba Voice is doing today. Thank you very much.
I think we received the accolade. Thank you so very much. But beyond that is the fact that we need to begin to understand this thing. And that's why this information is coming. We need to first of all understand it. We need to find a way to deal with it. We need to also learn how to begin to be intentional about living a life. No, we need to be intentional about parenting. We need to be intentional about the things that happen to us. No, we need to be intentional about how we live our life. Because there are ripple effects in all of those things. And that's why one of the reasons why we are doing all of those things. Now, Dr. Raji, I'm going to ask you two questions in one. I want you to take it because our time is really fast spent. And the first one is, which of the personality category does an individual who finds it difficult to forgive falls into? The clusters you mentioned earlier, the person wants to know. And then is oppositional defiant disorder a borderline personality disorder? If medication becomes a need, is the condition worsening or improving? Can you quickly do that in about 1 minute, Dr. Raji?
Sorry, come back, come with your second leg, please. The second leg of the question, I didn't get that.
Is oppositional defiant disorder a borderline personality disorder? If medication becomes a need, is the condition worsening or improving?
Okay. From the first question you ask, of course, someone who finds it quite very difficult to forgive, straightforward, that person belongs to the cluster A, which is the, if I would type it to someone who has paranoid personality disorder, they find it very difficult. So he belongs to that group. And of course, for the borderline personality, that if they are needing medication, is a sign that is getting worsening. It's a continuum, such that, as we have talked earlier, once this thing is affecting them emotionally, affecting their interpersonal relationship, and is causing them a lot of distress, I think the emphasis shouldn't just be to look at whether it's getting worsening or not. It's the fact that, just like you rightly mentioned, it is when you realize that they need this help, get them to assess care. But that's the way I would answer that. So there's no point just looking at whether it's getting worsening or not. It is, does this person need care? If he needs care, get the appropriate care. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much, Dr. Raji. So we cannot just sit here and say the need for medication means it's getting worse. No, the need for medication might also be that you're also getting solution to the problem. But if you don't take the individual to the hospital and they are not assessed, then it might be very difficult to actually say this is getting better or it's not getting the need or the help that it actually requires. So thank you so very much for everyone who had been on this call. Uzioha, the social worker, is there. Thank you so very much for this. Yes, there was this one Mr. Ban calling who had been raising the hand, and I think is finding it difficult to connect. I think it's just the internet. I'm so sorry about that. Sometimes some of those things we can't control, but as much as possible, we will do our bit to get the information out and to ensure that you stay informed about the basic thing that needs to be done. So thank you very much for being on this call, everyone. If you have questions, you can always send to us. Please don't forget we are also streaming live on the Facebook. So if your family members can access YouTube, they can access the recording on the Facebook, which is also very pertinent for them. And so we're going to be taking the last word from our speakers today. Dr. Raji, what's your last word for our guests, our audience today?
My last word will be that if you have the personality types that we have mentioned, if you have neighbors who exhibit any of them, please don't be prejudiced in your reactions to them. Don't call them names. Advise them appropriately and let them see the practitioner. You might just be saving a life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Raji. Mr. Pilot, your last word for today.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Akintoye. I would just have to say this. Like I said, this platform has enriched a lot of people. And I would just want to say that as much as possible, which is the most difficult thing to do, for everybody out there who may be struggling with one form of personality disorder, it's not the end of the world. But having a change of heart or having one of the very important traits in life, which is openness to new experience, can be very, very helpful at this time. So please be open to having a new experience and try change. And that may be the key to overcoming the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Pilot. It's your for innocent act if it's practically right to judge a person's personality disorder cluster of an individual by a single sign like unforgiving. No. I know you heard the pilot earlier talk about some facts. Some people have traits, some people have this, but then it's a cluster of things that comes together and makes them to be able to diagnose and say, oh, this individual has this personality disorder. So it's not just one. And if you have listened very well when Dr. Raji was giving the list of the different types of personality disorders that we have, he mentioned some key distinguished factors or designing factors that are associated with each of these clusters and each of these disorders. And so it's important that we understand that it's not just one. There are lots of traits there that comes together that makes it to go, oh, this person has this particular disorder or not. So thank you so very much for that. And so on this final note, I want to say thank you to everyone for being on this call with us. Please, you can access this webinar on the YouTube page. And I want to plead with you. I want to make a passionate appeal. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. What it does for us, it gives us more visibility. It allows people to see us more. And so if we're doing so much like this, we need to get the word out there for other people to understand. Yaba Voice is one word on Facebook and on YouTube. And so you can also access our past recordings on the YouTube page of Yaba Voice. Please subscribe. Send to your family members. Let them also subscribe. It gives us more visibility. It allows more people to be informed, and it allows us to create more awareness in terms of mental health. A lot of people are breaking down. In the last couple of weeks now, we had various incidents of people plunging into the river, killing themselves. And that wasn't the norm. It only shows the need for more awareness on mental health and to tell people that we're here and they can access the help. And that's what we're doing at Yaba Voice. Kudos to the medical director who has given us this great opportunity to even do this. So please and please, I want to say, please subscribe. And lastly, I mentioned that there is a book on resilience the last time, Resilience in Adversity. There are no time to talk about this book than now. Please get that book out. Just reach out and get the book so that you can help yourself. We need to help ourselves at this time. A lot are happening around us. And please, just subscribe, get to chat with us. We love to hear from you. Thank you so very much. And on this final note, I want to say thank you to everyone for being on this call with us, right from the head of Yaba Voice, the medical director, the head of clinicals, and every other member of the Yaba Voice team, and our key technical man, Mr. Kayo Deladeju. He's always here, giving us all the support that we need and ensuring that, yes, there is no itch or glitch in whatever way. Thank you so very much. And until we'll come your way again, we look forward to the year 2023. We look forward to something big and better. We look forward to doing more expansion. And until we come your way again, on behalf of the medical director, Dr. Lubenga Dekiliowoye, and every other members of the Yaba Voice team, we'll say thank you so very much. It's been a rewarding year. Bye-bye. Take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. No health without mental health. Bye.